Okay, well, I want to welcome everybody to our Zoom, and I like to call this our annual 8x10 because we've pretty much done it every year, and I'm not sure when Jean started the tradition, but when we could meet at REI, sometimes we would have 50 plus people or more in the room at REI, and people really did seem to enjoy it a lot. One thing I want to share before we actually get started, and today's not so much a good memory to have, but I just want to recognize that this is a 10-year time of Sandy Hook. So I just wanted to put that up there, and I think everyone who's been touched by that is in our thoughts. And the other thing I wanted to say is I saw on Lorenzo the Pilgrim on Facebook that as of yesterday, 436,019 people have gone to the Pilgrim's office in Santiago. So we'll see how much we get close to that 450,000 number, but we've already beat the records so far. But the whole purpose of our 8x10 is to have 8 pilgrims talk, and each pilgrim is going to talk for about 10 minutes. We're going to try and stick as close to that 10-minute time frame as possible. And we're going to start out with some Camino veterans, Mike and Ruth Hoffman. And they're going to talk about what time of year should I walk the Camino. So I'm going to say, take it away, Mike and Ruth. You can share your screen.
Right. Well, we've been on Camino in every month of the year except December, January, July, and August. On our first long Camino, it rained every day of the last 9 days that we were walking. And on another route, we crossed a mountain pass walking on top of 2 feet of snow. So we've been to Spain 8 times since 2012. And between us, total, we've walked about 8,000 kilometers in Spain, including 7 weeks of this spring in May and June. So we're not bragging, we just want you to know that we're speaking from experience.
So why did we pick this topic? Every year we meet folks who say, I'm going to start the Camino on September 10th, or something like, I hope to do the Camino in September of next year. And when I share with them the data that I'm going to show you, without exception, they are shocked. Of course, September is a beautiful time of year to walk. We walked in September before, and the weather's typically very good that time of year. And there's this graph, which almost all pilgrims have seen in one.
Bingo.
Okay.
Bingo. All right.
Okay.
Woo.
Okay. So as you can see in this graph, and we'll try to make up some time here. The highest number of pilgrims arriving in Santiago is in July and August. So let's go to the next one. I need to minimize these.
Okay, there we go. There we are.
Okay. I'm sorry. So this is the graph that I really wanted to show folks. So even though the highest number of pilgrims reach Santiago in the middle of the summer, this is from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is where many Americans start their Camino. You can see that April, May peak, actually it's May and September. This is by month. So you can see that May and September are the highest 2 months. And the reason this is because so many people that walk into Santiago never start in Saint Jean. They start in Sarria or a similar other close town where they can just walk for a much shorter time. Okay, go to the other one. Okay, and this graph shows, if you can see along the bottom, you see the weeks 1 through 52. So this is for an entire year broken up into weeks. Again, you can see that May is fairly high, but again, the two highest bars are weeks 35 and 36, which happen to be the first 2 weeks of September. And if you look at that number, it's about 3,000 pilgrims per week, which turns out to be over 400 a day. And the reason that's a problem is there's only 1 or 2 towns in the next couple hundred kilometers that have 400 beds. So it can be a real challenge. And we aren't trying to discourage anyone from doing Camino. We've been in Spain for hundreds of nights, and we've never seen a pilgrim have to sleep on the ground outside. But it can mean that you aren't able to be as spontaneous, or you might have to take a taxi to a nearby town or something like that. So that covers the main data that we wanted to share. As far as, the number of pilgrims in the busy time of year, right, on the Camino Francés.
All righty. All right. So one of the things that you have to consider when you're going to walk in Spain is the weather, of course. You really don't have to worry about the snow in the fall unless you're considering starting in November. But the mountains of Spain can snow, it can be quickly. As far as rain goes in general, the earlier in the spring and the later in the fall, the more rain you'll see. So June is drier than May, May is drier than April, and September is drier than October. October is drier than November, but every year is a little bit different. So you need to take that in mind and look at the charts before the weather data before you make your decision. Even in June, heat can be an issue. Temperatures in the 90s. July and August will most certainly have many days 95 to 100 degrees. If you're a hot weather walker, that's not going to bother you. Spring is beautiful. The scenery and the vegetation in Spain in the spring is incredible. Late spring is probably the prettiest time, with the flowers, the fields green, the young lambs in the pastures. But we also love the fall because there's so many fresh fruits and nuts in the fall. We've had apples, oranges, pears, plums, grapes, nuts, all kinds of things in the fall. So if you've seen the movie The Way, which most people have, it was filmed mostly in October, and even that had its own beauty with the stubble fields and the changing leaves. So there's no wrong time of year to do a Camino.
If you really want to go against the grain, one of the most inspiring video blogs I've seen on the Camino was a young married couple that left Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port on January 1st one year. And they had a 3-month-old baby that she carried in a little belly pack. And he carried a monster backpack with all of their gear in it. And they took 3 months to walk to Santiago through the heart of the winter. So it just shows you can do it whenever you want, and that's really ends up being the answer. We just know that a lot of people think that September is going to be a shoulder season when it depending on where you start, and it really isn't if you start in Saint Jean. And that's it.
So next.
Okay, that's me.
Tricia, unmute.
I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know when you can see. And can you see me? Are you able to see me?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Thank you. So, hi, my name is Clare DiBella, and no, I'm not Italian. I'm an Irish Catholic, the 9th out of 10 children, born and raised in the New York metro area, currently living in Denver. So religion has always been a central part of my upbringing and continues to be more important as I journey on this road called life. So I'm going to share with you today some of my thoughts traveling my first Camino, the Camino Primitivo. So at present, I'm officially an empty nester. I raised 7 children, and now they're all very independent. My oldest son, Anthony, 36 at the time, joined me on the journey, which I appreciated more and more as I journeyed because I originally wanted to go by myself. I don't know what happened to that slide. So we arrived a couple of days ahead and visited El Hierro in the Basque Country as part of my spiritual preparation for the journey, visiting the town of my guardian in life, where he was born and raised, St. Valentin. And as I said, I did the Camino Primitivo, starting in Oviedo Cathedral, which was to me the perfect start for our journey, inviting Christ into the picture for the decisions that I want or needed to be made. So the goal was to arrive in Santiago on August 8th, the anniversary of my husband's death, but creating a new memory for that day, other than just becoming a widow. So my daughter Teresa introduced me to the Camino by telling me about the movie, The Way, right? Everybody knows that one. And I've always enjoyed hiking and was a member of the Northern Colorado hiking group. And I've traveled to Europe a number of times alone and a couple of them backpacking. So the total timeline for the Camino Primitivo for me was 13 days, which was a desirable amount of time, leaving us an additional time of travel to the south of Spain for a week. So the Camino Primitivo, I thought, was a good fit for me, for the solitude I was seeking about planning for my future. Because I have a father who was born in Ireland, I have obtained my Irish citizenship, which permits me to live and work in any country in the European Union. I chose the Camino Primitivo because it is in the mountains, a less traveled path, the original way of all the Caminos, and very doable in the time that I had. It was also a more challenging route, which was appealing to me as well. I was so thankful to wearing boots rather than sneakers from my experience with the Northern Colorado hikers. And I had a 15-pound backpack, felt a lot heavier some days, but I was really committed to completing it on my back. I treasure and I'm very thankful for the time my son took out of his life to share this adventure with me. We shared navigating through many, many hills and valleys, giving encouragement when we felt we could not complete our goal for the day, only to realize we always were able to, just a matter of more rest stops and being patient with ourselves. I was physically and emotionally challenged on this path. The ups and downs through the mountains were breathtaking, yet very strenuous. Now, I don't know about this, but people were telling us along the route, who were mostly Europeans, saying that the ups and downs were equal to climbing Mount Everest. I would like to believe them because I did feel like that at the end, but I don't know if that's true. We found booking our lodgings in the morning was less stressful because housing is less frequent on this Camino, and it gave us a goal to reach for that day. We're not racing. We did not have to arrive at any certain time. We rested frequently, some days very frequently, stopping to enjoy the beauty of the small religious altars along the way maintained by the local towns. I felt immersed in a country, allowing me the time to reflect and to enjoy the companionship of my son. Because I can live and work in any country in the European Union, I thought along the way, can I live in Europe along a Camino as a cheaper option than living in the United States? Many times I was pushed beyond what I thought I was capable of completing that day, only to arrive at the end of the day to a welcoming albergue with the good food, rest, and a sense of community with other pilgrims. We supported each other, yet respected each other's space. We rested frequently, some days, like I said, very frequently, stopping to enjoy the beauty in local cafes for an espresso or a beer and a conversation with occasional travelers. Like I said, it's not a very well traveled. It's traveled mostly by Europeans, it seems. But it is, and it's not very crowded, as you can see from us doing it. And as far as the weather, it was overcast some days. And for the last 2 days, you walk on the French Camino where it starts getting a bit more crowded. We were almost at the end of the pathway. And arriving in Santiago as planned was very rewarding, knowing that we had accomplished a goal together. It was such a rewarding journey to take an adult child on. I decided that over the years ahead to devote planning a trip one at a time with each of them. I am registered and excited for the Camino Hospitalero training next February, bringing me closer to the possibility of offering to others the respite that was so needed at the end of the day on the Camino. And that's it.
Rick Bradley is up next, and he is he's going to talk about the Camino Norte. But Claire, thank you for your wonderful presentation, and I forgot to thank Ruth and Mike as well too. So thank you to you two, and I love your photos.
I can thank my son.
Okay. Everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. So see that my name's Richard Bradley. I've done the Camino Norte 3 times, as well as the English and the Finisterre. I'll start off with some Camino wisdom that I got along the way, and the albergue in Güemes, that everybody is on the Camino, but the pilgrims are the only one that knows where they're going. And after the Camino at Santiago is over, you still have the Camino through life that you need to live to your fullest. So the Camino de Norte, I'm going to talk very quickly about many things because I only have 10 minutes to cover 850 kilometers, 5 weeks, and 1,500 years of history. It starts in the border of France at the bridge Ponte de Santiago, joins sometime later at the Camino Francés in Galicia, and then ends at the cathedral. It passes through what's known as Green Spain, España Verde, because it's wet, lush, temperate, oceanic climate, allows for lush pastures, forest, but it does rain quite a bit. So this is part of a network that goes all over the world. I have ran people that actually started the Camino up in the Scandinavian areas. There's Camino routes along Germany that you can follow and through France and into Spain. It's a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-linguistic journey. Covers the entire north of Spain, starting the Basque Country, going to Cantabria, Asturias, and ending up in Galicia. Spanish will be spoken everywhere, but you're going to experience different languages and cultures among the people that live along the route. So expect to hear Caixo, Epa, Bon dia, other greetings. So starting the Basque area, Euskadi. It's the only non-Indo-European language in Western Europe. It's a very ancient culture, going back pre-Roman, has their own culture, music, dance, literature, and cuisine. There's amazing food in the Basque Country. I think it's Donostia has, I think, the highest number of Michelin grade restaurants in the world. You'll also see signs in Basque. So this is Camino de Santiago in Basque. In Cantabria, you'll be passing through it, was part of the Roman Empire. You'll be passing on Roman roads, was invaded by the Muslims, but then quickly joined the Reconquest. There is the Cantabria language spoken, but you probably won't hear it. Oops. Asturia, it was subdued, but not really conquered by the Romans, raided by the Visigoth Nasubi, who took over Spain after the Romans left before the Moorish invasion, and was a refuge for Christian nobles after it started after the conquest. Became a de facto kingdom, and it's the birthplace of the Reconquest. That's where the Reconquest of Spain spoke. The official language is Asturian, but I mean, the Asturian is Spanish, but the Asturian language, or Babel, is also spoken and protected. If you're interested, you can take a side trip to Covadonga, where the first battle was made, that where the inhabitants were able to defeat a Moorish army and start the reconquest of Spain. There's a cathedral and site there. When you hit Galicia, it was originally settled by Celtic people. There used to be a giant Celtic port. The Romans burned all their ships, and was incorporated in the Roman Empire. Then under the Suebi, then Visigoths, and then under the Muslims for a while, the Moors for a while, then became part of Asturia. The language in Galicia, you're going to run into it quite a bit, is actually ancient Portuguese, because when the Reconquest happened, the Galicians were the ones who were doing the conquest on the west and conquered, it's now Portugal. This is a very old route. At the time of the Reconquest started, this was the only part of Spain that was not under Islamic domination. So for people coming into Santiago, they had to travel along this route to go visit the tomb. The route itself goes along the coast until you hit Ribadeo, which it then turns inland. Notice that there's actually several routes you can take that come off of the Camino del Norte. The most famous, the one that just talked about, Camino Primitivo. It's the town of Castico. You'll see this little sign telling you can go to Oviedo or Gijón, and from there you can take the Primitivo. There's also Camino Francés, which is the cathedral there is supposed to have a piece of the original cross, and a lot of people went to it was there. So you can go through it and then continue on into the Francés or come back to the Norte. Recently, they opened up Camino Vidiado, which was another very old route that, because there used to be pirates all along the area here, pilgrims would come along this route and then cut down to the Francés to avoid the pirates, but it has very few services. I mentioned this area was, Rome conquered Spain, so you'd be going through towns that were founded during Roman times. You'll be walking on roads. Sometimes overtly, you'll see the cobblestones laid down by the Romans. Other places it's covered over. So many of the towns, like Castilla and León was originally Portus Anidas. The room where you start is Poyesa. And when you pass through Biamonte, you can see this replica of one of the original milestones. The original is in the museum in the local town. You'll be crossing along a lot of ancient bridges. Many of these built during medieval times. You'll be following routes that obviously before the national highways were built used to be the main routes through many of these towns. The advantage of the Camino del Norte I like is it's much less crowded than Francés, but this of course means that there's fewer albergues and they'll be further apart. And when you finally reach the Francés, be prepared for crowd shock as you go from seeing only a handful of people a day to suddenly huge mobs, sometimes walking in groups singing together. So just some statistics, the only about 5.5%, 5.3% of the pilgrims that to Santiago follow the Norte. You're going to have a lot of elevation changes because the rivers go from north to the north. And the Camino itself is a series of routes. You need to think about where you're going. So like on Gronze, they don't mention, they don't show the path to Isla, but if you look at the map, the booklet you can get in Bilbao at the near the Guggenheim Museum, it will show a route here. And this is where actually I saw the Cambrai Youth Orchestra give a free concert. It's a great albergue. Other places, you'll have multiple routes, like Bilbao to Portuguesa is a industrial area. I would suggest taking the route by the east side of the river, and then the right side of the river, and then taking this wonderful bridge across where you get carried over. So again, other places, Castanillas was closed, so you follow the official route, you would go here to get to the town here, but you could also follow here, cut down, and then there's some places you'll see the route has been detoured so that people will have businesses, so you can take shortcuts to bypass it. A warning, when you see this sign in, near Boimoto, make sure you pay attention to it. If you follow this route, you'll be 8 kilometers shorter, but there's almost no facilities. And it does have this lovely chapel. I think you'd like to see it. The routes themselves are varied. You have primitive roads, cobblestone roads through old towns. This used to be a railroad that was by the sea that was turned into a bypass. You have areas where the main road, you go off on what used to be the road, where the main road had to continue, pass, and sometimes by the highway. Usually you're following 634, sometimes on 634, sometimes parallel to it, but usually there's not a lot of traffic, except there is some heavy traffic when you get in the countryside. And you have some beautiful areas like here where you follow this ancient medieval road that goes under the Autopista, where you can see cars zipping by you at 100 kilometers an hour while you're trotting along on this ancient route. Signage is great, but be careful. In Australia, they often would just have these shell where you start the white. This shows that the narrow area is towards, so here you would turn right. Galicia, sometimes it's the arrows pointing in different directions. Oops. There'll be more signage along the way, including these ancient ones from medieval times. And other signage. You'll have varied landscape, seashore, through mountains, along coast, in open areas. You'll be passing lots of old churches and chapels along the way, including this one that was founded in 910 that you can get a tour of if you stay at the albergue there. By the way, the small town churches are great. They usually have a place where you can sit, beautiful inside, and often have water. There's also some abandoned churches that show where the deep population of the countryside is happening. You'll be going through small villages, towns, large cities that you might want to make some side trips to, like the Guggenheim Museum and San Sebastian. Albergues range from devoted schools to private ones, to monasteries, to old convents, and accommodations. This is normally, since COVID, the beds are further apart, but this is normally typical. Sometimes you'll look out on this, but you won't be able to do this now because they've now built an albergue. Oh, come on, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, it's a multi-ethnic, multilingual with the Pilgrims. In one place, there were 44 pilgrims from 14 countries. English is usually the lingua franca. The people you meet are going to be amazing. Dining, most of the albergues have a kitchen with pots, pans. Others serve meals, some have another. But there's little towns will have these type of stores. The big towns will have supermercados. There'll be restaurants and bars along the way that you can eat at normally. You don't have to worry too much about cooking. Try to find a place with a menu of the day. It's 10 to 15 euros for a full meal. In the small towns, they'll give you a bottle of wine, but you don't have to drink it all. And I collected pins all the way along the way. So advice, as Hoffman said, August is not really great. A lot of people take vacations. It's hot. Good idea to call ahead and reserve so you don't have to worry about it closing. Some places for albergues are only open a few months during the summer, so plan your head. And it's in the middle of the summer, it's best to do the sunrise and then have lunch in the afternoon when they cook. It's not a race. You have lots of time. Start training with a full backpack. There's some open areas you can go to. You're going to be walking 20 or 30 kilometers a day for about 5 weeks. Clothing, floppy hat, walking pole, it's slippery in places, sunglasses, windbreaker. Don't wear jeans. I suggest trousers with zip off legs so you can take off the legs when it gets hot. Cotton socks, good belt, money belt. Keep the weight under 15. Be aware you can't wash clothes every day because of rain and no washing machine. And 3 or 4, it doesn't weigh much, weigh a lot. And the post office will let you send things ahead. A lot of places will have the form. If not, if you log into their site, they'll send you a form. Of course, that doesn't do you any good, but this is the information they need. There's a lot of public transport in the area. The Basque area, you can very easily get around. Across the northern, there's the Fayetteville line that's part of the National Railroad. In some places, there's only 1 or 2 trains a day. Other places, like in one town, you have to take the Fayetteville because you can't cross the bridge. There's red buses and taxis that are cheap. If you're too sick or tired, you can take a taxi very easily. And some sounds. Okay? Snowballs. You'll hear this a lot on the Camino. It's one of the things you can look forward to. And at the end, if you're lucky, you can get there when they're having the incense burner swinging back and forth. So anyway, Camino Norte can be completed. The Camino life continues. So very quick, and I'm sorry I ran over.
Oh, that was wonderful, Rick. You did a great job of really making that fit. So beautiful photos again, too. So great information. I think one time we'll just have to do a Zoom just purely on the Norte, and then you can spend more time going over the various towns, but it looks wonderful. Okay, next up is Annie Sager. And Annie, I have your stuff. So let me pull up my stuff here.
Let's do the pictures at the end. I'll just do a
Okay,
start
you
out
go
talking
ahead.
and then
You tell me when
Okay,
I
hi.
should start sharing then.
will do. Hi, everybody. Looking back, I was a really unlikely pilgrim. I was never outdoorsy or athletic. I love to travel, but I always tried to be as comfortable as possible. So that was me on the cruise ship. That was me on the air-conditioned tour bus with my suitcases and curling irons. But in 2015, my whole life fell apart. I had relationship problems. I had mental health problems. I sold my house. I quit my career of 30 years. It was bad. I had treatment for anxiety and depression. No shame in that. If you need help, you got to get help. So in that time, I read about 50 self-help books on meditation, mindfulness, manifesting, philosophy. I went to Sedona and stood in the vortex. I was just searching. I knew there was an answer, but I didn't even know what the question was. I was just lost, not in a good way. Then I heard about something called the Camino de Santiago. And what really was a revelation for me was the albergues, the concept that I could have a shower in a bed every night. I could go on a long distance hike, but I don't have to carry a tent. I don't have to sleep in the wilderness and be eaten by a bear. And I thought, I can do this. So then, of course, I became obsessed with all things Camino. I found the American Pilgrims website and I learned a lot. Next thing I learned how to speak Spanish. I took a college course that taught me grammar and how to conjugate verbs. But how I really learned Spanish was listening to Spanish love songs like Enrique Iglesias and Jose. So I can say all the romantic things like estoy perdiendo tu amor, which means I'm lost in your love. And it took me a whole year to learn to roll my R's, but now I can say, no hay nadie como tú, mi amor. And of course, I can say all the important things like, help me, I'm lost. What is this? What is that? So anyway, when my friends found out I was going by myself alone, they thought, well, isn't that dangerous? And I said, well, no, I can be murdered anywhere in the world, so I might as well go to Spain. So my very first Camino on the French Way was 2017. I was 50 years old, of course, started in St. John. And on the very third day, everybody remembers the little town of Zubiri before Pamplona. I met a priest from Tennessee, and within like 2 minutes of meeting me, he put his hands on my head and prayed for me. Then I realized I was looking for holiness. I was looking for God. And for a lot of people, the Camino is a spiritual pilgrimage. What I love about the Camino is it exhausts me, it unwinds me. Back home, I tend to be a workaholic and have like a crazy monkey brain. But on the Camino, I just reached a meditative state, maybe because of the heat, the exhaustion, actual heat exhaustion. I just found a peaceful place. The Camino is just a place apart. Your only job is to eat, sleep, walk, and I just love that simplicity. I fell in love with it. Before my very first Camino, my biggest fear was the weather. You know, would it rain? Would I get wet? Should I have a poncho, rain jacket? And then my first Camino, I did walk in the spring and I experienced thunderstorms, hail. The Spanish word is la tormenta for, you know, rainstorm. And I actually was surprised. I found out walking the rain in the spring was exhilarating, made me feel alive and brave. And, you know, I walked up to Cruz de Ferro during a lightning storm. That was probably not that smart to walk up a mountain to a metal pole in a lightning storm. But I don't know. I just found out I loved the rain and the weather. And of course, the spring flowers. I know you've heard the phrase, the Camino provides. I found that to be true 1000%. Saint Therese had a poem, and the first line is nada le falta in Spanish, which means nothing is lacking. Nothing is lacking. And I found that on the Camino, just the friends, everybody helped me every step of the way. My first 2 Caminos, I had a personal rule, no reservations. I just wanted to walk until I was tired. And so that's 1,000 miles, no reservations. I always found a place. Once in Boadilla, if you've ever met Eduardo there, it was sold out completely, and the neighboring towns were sold out too. And he let me sleep in a room where they store furniture. And then on my 4th Camino, I went to the same place again, sold out, and he let me sleep in a family bedroom. That's just the way it is. The Spanish people are so generous. More than once, they opened up, invited me to their gardens and vineyards and gave me grapes, figs, peaches, nuts. Just Spanish people are so generous. So for me, it's definitely an internal Camino. I wrote this, that a pilgrim is someone who travels to a place afar. My geographical goal was always Santiago, but I came to understand that I was really looking for a quiet, holy place in my own heart. And that's what the Camino is for me. I just, of course, fell in love with the Camino. I'm sure you can relate to that. The people here, my fellow pilgrims, I love you. So 2017 was my first. I had a rule, I had to walk every mile. Of course I did, every inch. The next year, 2018, I rode a bike for 3 days on Meseta and then 1 day on a horse up to Osabreo. My 3rd Camino in 2021, I suffered a knee fracture in Santo Domingo de la Cadalza, and I couldn't walk anymore. But I still stayed a pilgrim, and I stayed on the route. I just took a taxi from town to town all the way to Santiago. I became a taxi pilgrim. There's no right or wrong way. We just all do the best I can. And then this year I just got home. I did it again, the 4th time on the French way. I'm completely in love with it. But now I want to try something new. So next year I will do the Via de la Plata. And here's a quick tip for you. I know you probably already know this, but if you can't sleep because of the albergues, first you want to do is take some Tylenol PM. Next, you put in your earplugs. And then this is the key part, number 3, you put on a headband just like this, right over your ears. It's a great tip. What? I can't hear you. What? Anyway, let's look at some pictures.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen here.
All right, let's just flip through these
Okay,
in no particular order. I just love the beauty of Spain.
okay, so I'm going to start this.
Yep,
Here we
go
go.
for it. St. John, going over the mountains. Next, just flip through these quickly. Next. Wow. Thank you, Chris, for putting that together. You are really talented. She did that whole thing. And I'm going to
Very welcome.
I'm going to end with this. This is a Bible verse that talks about pilgrimage. It's Psalm 84:5. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. That's us, folks. That's me and you. That's all you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. My heart is set on pilgrimage. I'm a pilgrim soul, and I am never going to stop walking. And with that, I will say thank you. I have 44 seconds left to say I love you all. And if anybody on this list wants to email me or go out to lunch, please call me. I need some friends. I just moved to Colorado. Thank you. Goodbye.
Where did you come here from, Annie?
Minnesota. It's like Antarctica.
Minnesota. Okay.
Minnesota. Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Well, we're glad to have you, and we hope to see you at some of our events. And please, yeah, very much welcome. So I'm glad. Thank you for volunteering. Great photos.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Okay, next up we have Linda Sawyer, and she's doing Walking the Camino, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And do you want me to bring up your slide, your PDF right away? Okay. I'm gonna share screen.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Yes, I'm Linda, and I fall in September through November, and I started in Saint Jean. I was a solo female walker, and I named this The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly because I did the Camino for personal reasons. I just had retired after a 40-year career as a registered nurse in Denver, Colorado, and I felt like I needed to process a lot of the stuff of the Camino. So of my life. And so I named this The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And the reason why I named this is that old Clint Eastwood movie that we are familiar with, if you're old enough, was a Sergio Leone spaghetti Western. It was filmed in Spain. Sergio Leone, even though he was Italian, loved to film in Spain. His headquarters was based in Burgos. And he liked filming that movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, in the small towns of Covarrubias and Salas de los Infantes. And actually, Chris Petty was just in one of those small towns, Covarrubias, this past summer, so she could probably interject then at the end of our Q&A. The reason why I'm doing The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, though, is a personal reflection more than what I what I observed. And I have these circles here because my life, like many of you, may have experienced compartmentalization. As a nurse, it really helped me to compartmentalize the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that the Camino was always on my bucket list. And I felt like I was called to walk that pilgrimage, to process my 40 years as a nurse. And so I named it The Good and the Bad and the Ugly because I was processing this long career of nursing, the things that I saw that were kind of ugly for me. So I'm going to wax more philosophical, more personal. Just so you know, that's where I'm going on this. This slide that you see is at the end of the world. It's at Finisterre. And many of you who've walked to the end of the world know where I'm looking at. And even though I didn't walk to the end of the world, I did start in Saint Jean. I walked to Santiago. But I did take a bus to Finisterre and Musha. The good that I saw in my pilgrimage was that we all, who are even considering and who have never done it, we're all adventuresome souls. We're all very risk-taking. We're very well prepared. We have our packing lists. We know exactly the kind of shoes we are. We are people that would go places by ourselves. We would go places that we've never been to. And we would go to these weird little albergues that we don't even have reservations at. And we would be doing that. So we're all open to new people, cultures, and landscapes. That's why I love pilgrimage. That's why I love Pilgrims, because we're all open to that. And of course, I had a desire to improve my Spanish. That's another reason why I went. I love it that people are open to improvement and improving new things and even starting something new. And we all are obviously lovers of nature and the outdoors. I love hanging out with people who are lovers of creation. So these are pictures of the Camino. Now onto the bad and the good, and the bad and the ugly, and they kind of morph into each other. They kind of spread and metastasize. I have a tendency to be hard on myself, and it was no different on the Camino. I was very type A. I was very dualistic. I was either or, like, oh, I have to carry that backpack. I have to carry my luggage. And I didn't check it in. I was really type A in that. I really wanted to carry that backpack. I was a comparison addict. This man that I have a picture of, he was a 74-year-old gentleman from Davos, Switzerland, who was riding his bike from the northernmost part of Europe to the southernmost part of Europe, which was Portugal, to the westernmost part of Europe, which was Finisterre. And I actually asked him, well, are you going to ride to the easternmost part? And he said, no, I'm pretty tired. And so I just felt like even that question was ridiculous. And here he was, having read all that way on his bike. I was comparing my food to his little food snacks. And, you know, that's kind of revealing that I was always even in that way, I was kind of comparing myself. Obviously, I was having daily aches and pains with my back and my feet. I was having headaches and dizziness, probably related to dehydration and not eating enough, and not eating a good breakfast, because in Spain you don't often have good breakfast with protein. I lost my passport in Spain, which was not the big bad that you think it is. I lost it in a forest probably, and nothing was stolen. But I had to take a side trip to Madrid, which was not that bad after all, because I got to see our U.S. Embassy in its efficiency. I got a purple emergency passport. It's purple, not blue. And that other picture is of me just hanging out, writing in my journal, which was very, very important in processing. Now, some of the ugliness that I saw is probably some of the things you've seen along the way. I did the Camino Francés, and you're walking sometimes through crowds, and you're waiting in lines sometimes, and you're seeing graffiti, and you're seeing how other pilgrims are walking, which always creates my tendency toward judgmentalism and criticism. I put this presentation together in November when I volunteered. I was still walking the Camino, and I was dealing with the tendencies of what's the difference, or not the tendencies, what's the difference between Puritans and the Pilgrims? Who were they? Who were the Pilgrims and who were the Puritans? And I was kind of philosophically thinking about them. And when I think about the Puritans, I think about this little recycling thing that I saw in Finisterre, where they each have little boxes for the ink cartridges and the cables for their phones and their batteries. And Puritans to me come across as maybe more concerned about which ones go which, purity codes, more fundamentalist, legalistic, where the Pilgrims had more of a heart of adventure and more of a heart of exploration. I'm not sure. I'm still processing all that. But I did see some witness to my ugliness, and witness to the ugliness also along Spain with the industrial areas and graffiti and such like that, the toilet paper in the forests, the long lines. But now that I'm finished with my Camino, I finished November 15th. I actually finished in Santiago de Compostela on All Saints Day, and I was able to go to the mass there. I would say that I'm still continuing that pilgrimage, and I appreciate Richard's because it is an ongoing pilgrimage, and I think I will processing this my entire life. I have these slides here. You have the metal worker pounding out the metal to form it. I was pounding out my stuff that I had experienced as a nurse. The divisions that I have experienced in my life. And this was a monument in Musha, basically commemorating the Prestige oil spill off Galicia. But I like it because it kind of depicts the yin yang of our lives and the divisions that we might have. Galicia has a lot of these symbols of Celtic symbolism, which I find very meaningful to me, because no longer do I really want to have separate circles in my life. I want to have circles that are merging and are more holistic. And obviously you see swirling all around Spain, these examples of these mosaics. This is a picture of my Compostela, which I'm very glad I got. And I just love this mosaic of this pilgrim who is seen with grapes ripening on the vine. And I think that's what we're all doing. We're ripening on the vine. And at some point in time, I will be ripe enough to be picked and made into good wine. So thank you for letting me present. And thank you, Pilgrims, for your journeys in Camino.
Thank you, Linda. That was great, and great photos and great sentiments. So thank you so much. And Larry Morris is up next. And I actually reached out to Larry back in October when I was going through Facebook, and on the American Pilgrims Facebook site, I saw these fantastic poems, and I've even borrowed some of his poems and attributed them to you, Larry, in our monthly newsletter. And so Larry has graciously agreed to give us some of his poetry from his Camino. So thank you, Larry.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for the invitation, and to the other speakers. It's just fascinating. I walked the Portuguese Camino with my wife. We left, I believe it was September 22nd, and we walked the first part of it with 3 other friends who were all in their 70s. Had some health issues. They walked a little slower, so we walked with them for 3 or 4 days, and then we walked on a little faster and had that experience. I have written poetry for about 15, 16 years. I've got 4 books, and poetry is sort of a native language of mine at this point almost. And so it worked really well for me to write my experiences in poetry. And I am going to, for the most of this presentation, simply read my poetry and let that tell the story. The other, I guess there were 5 of us that I said were walking. I also carried with me ashes from my 25-year-old son, who died about 3 years before we left. And you'll hear a bit about that in the poetry itself. The first piece was written in Porto before we left. It's called Prelude to a Pilgrimage. We've walked miles preparing for this pilgrimage that begins tomorrow. We'll walk about 140 miles, but this is not a marathon. It's not a race. For me, it's not even to see if I can do it. This is a walk to listen to my body and to my soul and to the Holy One. This is a time to listen to my friends and meet new friends and to hear the Spirit in those conversations. This is a time to walk with my wife, to remember my son, and to let love speak its word. This is a time, as is all time, to let go, to let life happen spontaneously and intentionally, and breathe deep in the rhythm of it all. Tomorrow, we walk. We stayed a number of the nights in albergues that we had made reservations in, and that spontaneous part of it was part that I really loved. One night, it only rained late one afternoon and into the next morning, and it was a light rain. And that night we found ourselves, we had a hard time finding an albergue, but we finally did. And we ended up having a feast in a converted garage. This is called a pilgrimage feast. The 9 of us from 3 different countries ate supper together. We were all staying at the same albergue that was not close to a restaurant, so we took the meal that was offered. While we ate, we talked of the Camino and where we started and where we came from that day. Then someone asked a deeper question. Why are you walking? After a moment of quiet, one of us said they were learning lessons of acceptance. Another was learning day after day gratitude. Another talked of wanting to learn spiritual lessons, wanting to grow closer to his wife, and told us of his son's ashes he carried with him. One more told us of his daughter who died some years ago. It was a magical and delightful and loving conversation with people we had never met before. That is the Camino, and that was a feast. I mentioned that I took some of my son's ashes. He and I had talked about traveling together, and I think we might have done this pilgrimage together. We certainly would have been in Europe together. And it seemed appropriate for me to bring some of his ashes and put him there. This is called Pilgrim Ashes. I brought his ashes to leaving places he would have loved, places that speak of his life and values, and places I would have wanted to show him. I've decided not to think of my journey as simply leaving his ashes, but of sharing him with the world. I shared him with a beach he would have found stunning. I shared him with a statue of St. Francis that reminded me of him, of his compassion for those in need. I shared him with a place in the trail where the trees formed an arched arbor that was peaceful and beautiful. My wife is a part of this journey, and together we continue to share this pilgrimage with Gabe and share him with the world. I was posting these on a couple of Facebook pages as we went, and this is one that really got a lot of responses. People who were saying, "That's my journey. Can I share this with others? Because I have a hard time telling them what it's like." And I said, "Sure." That's why I post. This is called So Much More. We've slept with 20 other adults in bunk beds in dormitory-style rooms for a couple of weeks. We've washed our shirts and underwear in bathroom sinks in the evening, and sometimes started the day in damp clothes. We've walked with blisters and sore feet and achy shoulders. We've drunk more coffee and eaten more bread than we ever have and may ever again. We've sweated through our clothes over and over and refilled our water bottles again and again. We've woken in the dark to pack our backpacks and tie our shoes and start again. We've napped some days, falling onto the bed in sweaty clothes, simply being done until hunger woke us. And many, if not most of the people I've talked to, are already dreaming of doing it again. It is so much more than the work and pain. It is the joy It is the wonder. It is the connections. It is the prayers. It is the mystery. Buen Camino. I am a fan of John O'Donohue, Catholic priest who writes blessings. And so I wrote this pilgrim blessing in a form that if you read his work, you might recognize. It's simply called a pilgrim blessing. May this journey be a blessing you could never have imagined, but your heart longed for anyway. May this journey issue its own invitation and your soul dance in acceptance of it. May this journey reveal your next steps, give vision for the days ahead, and deepen your breath moment by moment. And may this journey walk you home with love as its gift, contentment as its guide, and peace as its calling. We spent a couple of days in Santiago, and I wrote this at the end. When the walking ends. They come from Spain and Portugal and France and the United States and South Korea and Indonesia and from around the world. They come on foot for hundreds of kilometers, some with blister upon blister. They walk in sun and wind and rain, on cobblestone and asphalt, on dirt and in mud. And then in the square, in front of St. James Cathedral, with tears on their cheeks and joy in their hearts, they hug their friends, kiss their lovers, and throw their arms in the air, all in delight. And finally, in exhausted exuberance, they lay down in the square, put their heads on their backpacks, and rest. In a dream lived out, in a joy fulfilled, in a labor completed, in a wonder shared with thousands of pilgrims. It's overwhelming and humbling and gratifying and inspiring and exhausting. It's the Camino. And inside the cathedral, they will tell you the real Camino begins when the walking ends. I've written about 20 of these. I'm only going to read one more. This is called Camino Afterlife. It's been 2 weeks since my wife and I walked the Camino. It's been almost a week since we got home and began adjusting to a new time zone. And today, when we went out for coffee, we talked about deeper things, about feelings from years ago that still live inside of us, about the courage that propels us to do the things we do, about living in the here and now, alive in the moment, open to and connecting with friends and strangers who enter our lives, often in tender and life-giving ways. You don't have to walk the Camino to talk about deeper things, yet the spirit of the Camino was there in the coffee, in the attention to each other, and then the experience of the power of the moment. Buen Camino.
Larry, that was fabulous.
Thanks.
And in the chat, there's a question if those poems could be shared. And what I would say, if you're willing to do that, send them to me. And then anybody who would like to have them, I can send them out to folks.
Sure. And I do have a Facebook author page, Larry P. Morris Author.
Okay.
There's a way to find that. And you can see the other things that I write and post. I usually post a couple times a week. So but I'll send those to you, and then you can, these specific ones.
That would be great. And if you could put their Facebook page in the chat, then people can get that, and then they can go and look that up as well too.
I'll do that. Great.
Wonderful. I am envious at your literary talents.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks again for the invitation.
Oh, thank you for joining. Alicia is up next, and Alicia had to be available and work while she also did the Camino, so that she's going to talk about how it is possible to stay in touch and work if you have to while doing the Camino.
So a little bit of a 100-degree turn from the last presentation. So back to reality, because not all of us have the luxury of being able to disappear for 6 weeks. And so I am a little bit, hold on just a sec. Hold on. Let me get my slideshow up. And start slideshow from the,
So what you can do is get that up on to the slide.
yeah, and then do the
and then
share
start.
screen.
Yep, and then the share, the green button and then the blue button.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Okay, everybody got it?
Yep.
Okay. So the theme of this next few minutes is if you have to stay in touch when you're doing the Camino, you just don't have a choice. You cannot leave your work life behind you. And a little bit about myself. I am a practicing CPA full-time. So it just wasn't practical for me to leave my clients behind for 4 weeks and just go do the Camino and not respond if somebody needed a copy of a tax return or a W-2 or had an emergency that they needed to be dealt with. So one of the themes of what I want to talk about is like technology to take with you. And I would encourage people as they have thoughts about technology that might work or did work for them on the Camino to put it in the chat so we could all share each other's ideas. I've been on the Camino Francés 2 times. Each time I did about 70% over 4 weeks and was successful more or less in taking care of clients' needs while I was walking. So in terms of technology tools, I travel with a Surface Pro. That's my laptop. And so it did bring along extra weight, which for me meant using a transport service, partly because of the weight and partly because I wasn't really comfortable carrying in bad weather my laptop. So it does add a complication to your Camino, a little wrinkle about having to face the issue of whether you want to use a transport service or carry it with you and adding the extra weight. I did run into a couple times guys who were carrying their laptops in their backpacks, which I was like impressed with, but because that wasn't for me. But and then of course, not just do you have the laptop, but you have the cords, which add the weight, the power packs and stuff. And of course, you want to bring the adapter for Spanish to US electrical outlets. And I have to carry a fairly large one, so that was more weight. Some people can do it on a smartphone. I could not. I needed my laptop to do the work. And then the other issue is, how do you stay in touch? And of course, that's dependent on Wi-Fi, which is usually available in the castorales and albergues, but it could be spotty, especially at the time of day when you most want to be in touch, which would be the end of the day. Everybody else might be on the Wi-Fi network too. So dealing with that, you might want to have a hotspot on your phone. And they also make things called Wi-Fi extenders, which I don't have experience with, but which you might want to look into. And then I had to get a local SIM card. My cell service didn't work in Spain. And I found both times I was there, the best for me was getting like a mobile or one of the local services through a locutorio, which is those little shops where they sell candies and cigarettes, things like that. And a little bit bigger towns have them, like Pamplona or Estella or things like that, where you can find them and you can get a local SIM card. Let's see. And then the other thing is how to communicate back in the United States. In Europe, WhatsApp is very common in terms of being able to reach people. It's not so common here in the United States, which is why I think you have to seriously think about getting a local SIM card and not just rely on Wi-Fi if you want to be able to be in touch. And then in terms of the practicalities of actually making it work, for me, I had to carve out, like when I was walking, that was sacred time, not to check email, not to be in touch with clients. It was my time for me. From the time I woke up in the morning until I finished checking into my lodging and getting settled in. Because I think for me, if I had interrupted the day with emails and all that kind of nonsense, it really would have taken away from the experience of being on the Camino. But once I had checked into my lodging, kind of time to put on a different hat and be in touch with clients and see what needed to be done. And one of the things that works in our favor is the time difference. I'm in Denver, obviously. So that's an 8-hour time difference. So when I was walking, or when we're walking, is when people over here are sleeping. So it actually works pretty well in terms of giving you time to be focused on yourself and not have to worry about the interruptions. The problem comes at the end of the day, 8 or 9 o'clock at night, when things start wrapping up over here in Denver. You're ready and you need to crash. So it's just a matter of setting boundaries and being clear and just setting those few hours aside to do what you need to do. And in terms of time management, I mean, the truth is there's really only 2 to 3 hours a day that are available to kind of do work. By the time you walk, check in, get your laundry done, shower, and in between dinner, there's not that much time, but there is some time to have for doing work. But of course, that cuts into possibly sightseeing and rest time, the times when you might be wanting to explore the city, but you've got a few emails you got to respond to. So there's obviously going to be a trade-off. And in terms of preparation, I would say as much as possible before you go, really think through what can you have available online. So it's cloud-based databases or support services that you can access quickly, so that at a kind of a touch of a button, you can get a request handled. And after COVID, that became so much more common. So it's not an uncommon thing anymore to be working remotely and staying in touch. And I think it helps to prepare your clients or your whoever it is you're working with advanced notification that you're going to be gone. Prepare them that you'll be available, but you won't be totally available. But you're going to do your best to stay in touch. And of course, if possible, can you rely on support back in your location where you're traveling from? Do you have someone on the ground who can maybe pick up mail for you and take care of the day-to-day type of things that you just don't have time to do? So anyway, like I say, it worked for me. I know it's not for everybody, because I know it does. I mean, there are those few hours a day when you're focusing on your work life and not on being Camino life. But I wouldn't have been able to do the 2 Caminos that I did without taking my technology with me. So So anyway, that's what I wanted to cover. So like I say, I look forward to seeing any ideas in the chat that you might have.
We actually have some. Laura mentioned that she just brought her phone, but then she got a foldable, a small keyboard to use with her phone. And I think that's pretty creative. She also put that link in that she got it on Amazon. So you can copy and paste that out of the chat if you're interested, or save the chat for later on.
Okay.
And then for me, I just usually use my iPhone, but this last time I ended up bringing my small iPad, which is only about this big, because I needed to have a bigger screen to be able to do some chapter stuff if I needed to get in touch and do stuff. And the nice thing about the chapter stuff is that it's all on a Google Drive, so I can just log into that. So the files were available there. And then Rick mentioned that he gets an orange card at the Madrid airport, and he buys his European adapters rather than bringing the plug-in types. He gets the European type adapters at the Chinese bazaar stores because they're cheaper than getting them at the airport. That's a smart idea. So that's really good. Are there any
Thank
other
you.
thoughts about technology or how people worked or stayed in touch while they were doing their Camino? Well, this is useful, and you know, it is a challenge, and I'm impressed that you, Alicia, that you were able to enjoy your Camino and not feel overwhelmed while you were doing it, that you were able to kind of put places in different file folders and then just enjoy your Camino while you're doing it. So good for you. Oh, a small power strip, Rick says, is helpful too. One thing, you talk about a small power strip, Rick, what I did, I bring a 6-foot extension cord and then I get the adapter put in, but then I've got 3 plug-ins on my extension cord because sometimes that plug-in, the outlet's too far away from your bed in an albergue. So I bring a 6-foot extension cord.
Yeah, that works well because, yeah, I said a lot of the albergues don't have a lot of outlets, and sometimes they're halfway up the wall. So
Yeah.
when you go to the Chinese bazaar, you can pick up a small one with a long cable cord, and that way, because other people won't care if you unplug their phone if you plug it into yours.
Right. Well, thank you, Alicia. This was great and very useful. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is going to be Maureen Entrup. So Maureen, you're up. And do you want me to, I'll wait on sharing the screen with the little clip on it until you tell me to. Maureen, you're muted.
1 second, people are texting me.
Oh, you're muted.
I don't know what it,
There you
okay.
go. Perfect.
All right, great, thanks. Hello, my name is Maureen and I live here in Denver. And I think everyone has done a wonderful job tonight in terms of taking a look at answering the questions about the logistics and the spirituality aspect. And I think the other big question that comes up fairly often is I don't have time, which we've looked at, and I'm afraid to do it alone. So this was my second Camino. I'm going to focus on the fact that I don't have time. And so if you don't have time, the minimum starting point, is all of us know, and that you might know, is in Sawyer, which you can fly into Madrid, and then from Madrid take a 4-hour beautiful train ride to the starting point. In the middle of my Camino this time, and again, as I said, many people ask me, oh, you're going to do this alone, and aren't you afraid? That tends to be one of the general questions. And so in the middle of this, right outside of Azura, they stopped me. I was crossing the street and there were a group of people with a camera and they started asking me questions. And of course, they became interested because they heard I was a single woman alone from Estados Unidos, and were doing a video to try to promote different ideas and different experiences. It was going to be on Spanish TV and throughout Europe was the idea that I had gotten to encourage people to do the Camino. So this is just a quick 2-minute video that they captured and sent to me.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
You want me to share now?
Please.
Okay, hold on. Let me get it up.
Here we go again. Here we go again.
Buenas tardes and greetings from the Camino. My name is Maureen Entrup and I am from Denver, Colorado in the United States. It is my honor to do this Camino for the second time, and I always do the Camino alone. And people say to me, "What, are you crazy?" And I find the joy of doing the Camino alone because you learn so much from the wonderful people from all over the world. I'm also doing it alone this time because since I did the Camino in 2017, I've had 2 younger brothers die. So the Camino is a wonderful time to reflect upon the many blessings that we have and to focus on the many adventures that life gives us. I have to laugh because my one brother, his nickname was Oak, and every day when I see the oak trees and the oak, I know that he is walking with me. And my other brother, Roberto, also loved to walk in the woods. So I feel they are very close, and it is very healing for people to enjoy that journey.
Here we go again. Here we go again. And here we go again. And here we go again.
In Denver, Colorado, we have a very, very large pilgrim group, a Camino group. And I try to go and tell other women, go, do it alone, do not be afraid. It is a wonderful experience that will bring harmony and health and understanding to your life. Why do I have this brace on my knee? Before I left, the doctor said, you know, you really are crazy. You need a new knee. And I said, I am going to take my old knee on the Camino because it likes it. And so even if you're a little bit afraid that, oh, I hurt here, or I have a problem there, do not let your fear keep you away from the Camino. You can make it your Camino, make it as fast or as slow as you want, and know that you will be blessed and guided. To bless all the pilgrims that are on this Camino, that they all find peace and happiness, and it helps the world to have more understanding, respect, and appreciation. That's why I will do the Camino again.
So I was just so surprised that, and I think it was the curiosity of a woman from the United States doing it alone. And I didn't know what they were going to ask me. So I think, as we have all done tonight, it was spoken from the heart. And some of the things that have come up that we've gone back and forth on is, no, I'm a big user of WhatsApp. It's a very easy way to communicate once you have Wi-Fi in your hotel at night. That was one thing. The other, in regards to logistics, there were 4 women from England, and they were all fighting on the Camino because 2 wanted to book ahead and 2 did not. And so again, when people say to me, well, how much does it cost? Where do I stay? I think that's your personal opinion in terms of how you want to travel. Some people are planners. Other people are a very free spirit. The advantage, obviously, of booking ahead is the cost is going to be cheaper. I was very surprised at looking in a 3 months difference. You're not going to be spending time looking for Wi-Fi in order to book a place if you don't have the SIM card. And you can just embrace that moment on the Camino. Plus, if you so choose, you can send your baggage ahead for €2 or €3. You leave it at the front door at 8 a.m. and when you get to the hotel that night. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is you're a free spirit and you live in the moment. So I think that's your personal decision in terms of what's best for you. I think the other big thing to take a look at is spend the extra time in Santiago. So many people get there and they hurry and get their Q code and then they get their Compostelo and they really don't embrace the beauty and the magic of walking around. I mean, it was a little bit of a problem because my one hotel, they were out singing and dancing till 3 a.m. I mean, fortunately, I had my swimming plugs in my ears, but don't just go in and get the Compostelo and leave because it doesn't give you time to let the Camino speak to your soul. And as I speak about that, I'd say it is. We've said this all along. It's an adventure. I would say this is an opportunity in life to surrender to life's synchronicity. And so in that case, buen camino to all of you. The presentations were wonderful. We touched upon the spirituality and the logistics.
That was great, Maureen. And I'm glad you brought up about spending more time in Santiago, because I volunteered for 2 weeks in Santiago at the Pilgrims office this past summer. And every day I found that there was something new to see and something to do. And it's just such a vibrant city with all of the pilgrims coming in on a daily basis. And there's just so much history there. So thank you for including that.
Well, and right up the hill from where you get your Compostelo, if you take a left out of the office and make a right, there is the huge Cathedral of St. Francis, and you can get another Compostelo there. And a lot of people don't take the time to go do that. And that's a beautiful Compostelo also.
It was supposed to be a special one this year too, with it being a holy year, I understand.
Yeah, but I did go there and that was very touching. So as you said, there are so many aspects of Santiago to go to the Mercado and so many different things that if you just rush out, as some of the people were doing, they don't have time to really relish the beauty of the Camino.
Right. Well, I want to thank all the speakers, but before we end, I do want to take some editorial privilege here, and I want to share a couple of things. So bear with me for a second. I just want to say that we're going to have a New Year's hike, but then also some of you may have seen that's been posted in the American Pilgrims Facebook, but also if you get other Camino Facebook posts, there is a St. James pilgrimage that's taking place in Tasmania, Australia. And since 2020, it's been virtual, but they're going to continue on with this virtual St. James pilgrimage. And they've invited people from around the world to join in. And so I created about just a 9 kilometer or a 9 mile walk. It's about a 15 kilometer walk on day 1, which is January 14th, and day 2, which is January 15th. And day 1 is going to be around the Lowry part of Denver, and there's lots of cool art and stuff to see around the Lowry area. And day 2 is going to be in Littleton, and it'll be along the High Line, the Lee Gulch, and the Mary Carter Greenway trails. And each time we'll be walking to a St. James church. The one in Lowry is St. James Catholic Church, and the one in Littleton is St. James Presbyterian Church. So we'll have time to get some hot drinks and things like that along the way. Maybe we can even create a little credential and have people sign it as we stop by various places. So I think it should be fun. If you can't make joining us with the chapter, do it on your own or do it with friends. And I think you can sign up on Facebook, and that Facebook is called Way to St. James Global Camino 2023. So I'll post that in the chat here if anybody is interested in checking it out, and then you can sign up to do it. And then last,
Chris, what were the dates again? Because I don't do Facebook.
January 14th
Okay.
and January 15th.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then the last thing I want to share we've gone through lots of coordinator changes, and obviously we all know about Gene by now. Gene, our heart and soul of our chapter, you can see him leaning on the Marmot Passage sign there. He died unexpectedly in September of last year while he was riding his bike on a bike path around Denver. And so he's still felt in many of our hearts, and we thank him so much for getting our chapter going. And then Chris Ashton is calling it quits. This month is her last month, and she's been, I want to say she's been a chapter coordinator since at least 2015, maybe even 2014. But her husband died on a trip unexpectedly in 2018. And since then, she's just been doing a lot of traveling, and that's been her focus right now. So she's going to continue with her travels and her long walks and doing her own pilgrimage in life. But we've got new coordinators on board. And we've got Chris Keith, who you'll see in the blue t-shirt there, and we have Linda Ozawa. And they are great. They're experienced, and I am just so excited to have them on board. And Linda's kind of in the Centennial area. Chris is up in the Lyons, Colorado area. And then we have, I don't have a separate photo of Jim and Mary Jo Palladino, but they started walking from St. Jean this fall. They ended up calling it quits early, but then they were able to go on to Santiago. And this is Jim taking a photo outside of a Tertulia restaurant cafe in Santiago. So I want to thank the four of them for coming on board, and they're going to be a great help with the chapter. So thank you everyone for attending. Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask right now? Okay. Well, I appreciate you all. I appreciate all the speakers, all the work that you went to, and the variety was just outstanding. So big round of applause for you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Well done.
Thanks for organizing it, Chris.
Bye-bye, Ultreya. Thank you.